Hey there, cats and kitties. I am the Blues Man, Johnny Blues. With this video, I'll be discussing my thoughts on episode 6 of the anime series, Brynhildr in the Darkness. And I love how this series manages to build up a very tantamount, paramount kind of cliffhanger in the previous episode, and straight away gets to it in a relatively simplistic manner as far as how they deal with it once you begin a new episode, but not in an overly simplistic way so that you see it coming or that it isn't, passable within the confines of the rules that were set up in the story. In this particular case, it pretty much did fall in line with what I was thinking to do with Kotori's being able to teleport. That played heavily into how they, got around this. And we're seeing her character being very selfless in that because she doesn't have any pills left and her life is very limited, she's thinking in terms of, switching herself out for Kuroha and taking her place. In other words, being wiped out by this AA+ witch Kikako who is trying to attack her. And this only comes after the fact that essentially Ryota, who's trying to get Kuroha to understand, we can't fight this witch. We got to get the hell out of here. It ends up turning out because Kotori comes on the scene, all of a sudden Kuroha has her excuse as to why she wants to take on this AA class witch face to face. And Ryota realizes there's little to any choice otherwise, so they have to deal with the consequences right here and now. You have Kana's, sort of visions that she's seen either Ryota or Kuroha dying as a result of this, shifting once again. We aren't actually privy to what exactly the change was in this current vision, but she does realize that Ryota must have come to some conclusion that will be something they can use to their benefit. And this turns out to utilize Kotori's switching out capability, her teleportation technique, where essentially instead of her switching out Kuroha from being blasted, she switches out this Kikako AA class witch. And she is the one who ends up, tied up to that pole that essentially Kotori was doing so that Kuroha, if she had switched her out, wouldn't come running to save her life and all this kind of stuff. So essentially they managed to take down this AA class witch. None of them are harmed, and almost all of them go on their merry way. Only, of course, Ryota realizes that Kotori has gone missing, and piecing together that something isn't quite right, they end up figuring out where she is because of the documentation she had filled out for the astronomy club as being dictated by Kazumi over the radio and everything. They figured out where she's holed up, and we find out this entire backstory of how she and her friend Chi were, in hiding there basically, and they both were running out of pills, and this Chi girl ended up purposely not taking her pills so as to give Kotori a happy 16th birthday. Both of their birthdays were within a week of each other, but neither one of them would have survived had they both ran out of their medication, their, death-suppressant pills. So essentially, if we're to believe this story, Chi went out selflessly, wanting to give Kotori her happy birthday. And of course, when Ryota and Kuroha come calling, they find out this entire backstory, and they realize one of Chi's main wishes for Kotori was that no matter how much hardship she faces, much like that great Charlie Chaplin song from ages past, Smile Though Your Heart Is Breaking and such like that, it was Chi's greatest wish that Kotori always be smiling. And this is something that Ryota realizes, they really took the time to spell this out, this realization out, that in these visions of Kana's, you saw basically Kotori smiling very somewhat ominously, and it was misdirected, or at least that's his suspicion now, that they all jumped to the conclusion that Kotori must be the one who was sent in to effectively try to kill them all and all that kind of stuff. And the thing about that is, for me, the lengths to which they tried to spell out how innocent Kotori is in this episode and how everybody got it wrong, and we hear this backstory of this selfless nature of hers, the kindness in her heart that she wanted to save, Kuroha with and all this kind of stuff. It really just sort of embeds in me a further suspicion that she's the spy that the lab and Ichijiku actually sent in. Because, we do see that this Kikaku is the one who came calling, but finally, as we see when Kikaku is caught up by the lab, they say even though she did successfully manage to capture all three of the Honists from the witches she was supposed to, as was her order, this is not the three witches that are the main focus of the series. So the question still remains, is this who the lab sent, or is it in fact Kotori? And down the line, we will find that she is, a betrayer in waiting. I just think they were really banging over the head and trying to drive home her innocence, and that makes me call it into question that much more, put it that way. But essentially, we see that Ryota, in follow-up to this, has an idea. He realizes the importance of these death-suppressant pills, and he has an idea of somebody he can approach, this doctor/scientist called Kogoro, who he's going to go basically hit up for them. Now, in order to do this, he's got to kind of make him understand, you know what, if you get involved in this, your life could be on the line, and there's magic involved, although it's not magic in a supernatural sense, but it is some kind of force, some kind of, ability that goes beyond definitive explanation, and you got to be prepared for this. So the way they basically do this, very cunning, I thought, was he has Karoha sitting outside his office, and per his radioing her, she's going to destroy things in his office from afar. And at first he doesn't believe it. He's like, oh, well, you could have snuck in and, put little explosives here or there or the other thing. But then he's like, well, hit that point in the floor, and the floor explodes. He's like, here, use this pen that was my father's. It explodes. So all of a sudden, you just see him go completely wide-eyed and mad with wonder. And so, the question remains, is this guy going to be somebody to be trusted? Will he actually successfully help them get their hands on further death-suppressant pills? And, who is the lab going to send next if it isn't that Katori is the spy in the wings, in the waiting? And so, yeah, I greatly enjoyed this episode. I can't wait to see what unfolds next. And otherwise, that'll be pretty much it for me on this. Hope this video finds you well, and I'll catch you all later. Peace.